Alright, and we are back. Right now it is 1:21 p.m. Friday the 29th, 2017, and we're going to go over chapter 15. And this one is entitled "The Ideal, the Beautiful, the Worthy, and the Great should be the constant companions of the soul." And before we get started with this chapter, I want to read you a verse from our Bible. And this one is from Philippians 4:8. And this one says, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things." Think about those things. Whatever it is that you want to do, form the highest conception of yourself doing it. Always think on the higher, think greater, think positive, think the good things about things that are going on and happening around you. Because remember, thought is the seed which eventually will germinate if it takes root, if you allow to take root in the subconscious. And that germination will result in your actions, which will become your character, which will in turn become your destiny. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and let's get started. Chapter 16. The ideal, the beautiful, the worthy, and the great should be the constant companions of the soul. When the ideal, the great, the worthy, and the beautiful are chosen as constant companions, the soul invariably enters a transcending mental atmosphere, and such an atmosphere is indispensable to the perpetuation of youth. The reason being that the mental atmosphere in which the soul lives determines to a very great extent the nature of those conditions that appear in the personality. The transcending atmosphere tends to elevate, expand, and develop the mind, thus promoting growth which is inseparable from youth, while mental atmospheres that are not transcending tend to produce the opposite effect, and all the conditions of age will inevitably follow. The mind that lives in the ideal forgets age, because in the consciousness of the ideal, everything partakes of the newness of youth. Everything is in a state of youth, being formed the likeness of that which ever is absolute, simply because the very fabric of our consciousness is always youthful, because it is formless. And everything that the ideal which the consciousness focuses on, his thoughts are no longer on age or anything of the kind, because it's focused on a picture, an ideal, an image that would like to be accomplished. And in the absolute, the conditions of age cannot possibly exist. The conditions of age are conditions of imperfection, incompleteness, and unnaturalness. Such conditions therefore cannot exist in the ideal, and to live in the ideal is to eliminate age from consciousness. To eliminate all thought of age completely from consciousness, that is, to absolutely forget age, is one of the principal essentials to the perpetuation of youth, because when the mind absolutely forgets age, it will naturally think of youth and youth only. To constantly think of youth, because age is an idea, age isn't something that exists. Age is a race habit, a race idea, an idea that has entered into the mind that lives in the physical, that is not aware that the physical body completely renews itself and is entirely new every year, and that the mind itself is something that just always is, and it grows in intelligence, but it doesn't grow in age. It just expresses that which it thinks. When the mind lives in the ideal and is constantly in touch with that which has quality, superiority, and worth, all the elements of mind will tend to give expression to the best that they may contain. And this is another essential to the perpetuation of youth. To continue to stay young, it is necessary to promote the perpetual growth of all the qualities of the personality. But it is not possible to promote growth unless everything that is involved in the process of growth continues to give expression to its very best. The process of growth is a rising above the conditions of the present. It is the transforming of the largest and the best into something that is larger and better. And to transform and develop the best, we must act upon the best. We must be in our best and give expression to our very best. To perpetuate youth, the entire personality must pass through a continuous process of development. To promote this development, every part of the personality must always be at its best. But nothing can be at its best unless it continues to live in the ideal and selects for its mental companions those things that have a high quality of worth. That makes a whole lot of sense, because as we talk that our life moves in the direction where our mind takes it. And we cannot have the best unless we can first live in the ideal of having the best, of being the best. Unless we first form that mental picture in the mind, the best that we can conceive of, the best that we could even form any conception of. Because it has to first exist in here before the subconscious can take action on it to really bring about the results, and before the law of attraction could be employed to work. It has to first exist in here. Remember, if you can see it in your mind, you can hold it in your hand. If you can't see it in your mind, you can't hold it in your hand. It is therefore evident that the body is to stay young. The soul must live in that ideal state where everything always is young, where everything continues to act in such high states of being that conditions of incompleteness are constantly being transcended, and as age is a condition of incompleteness, it cannot possibly exist in such a life. To live in the transcending atmosphere, it is to place the mind above the forces of environment. Remember, we have to think greater than our environment. We have to think beyond what is happening in our environment. That is the only way we can overcome the environment, and to really have power over the environment. Because if you're thinking equal with your environment, you're giving equal power into that environment. But if you're in an environment which is just not congenial to your nature, that is not congenial to your ideal, what we must first do is to raise our thoughts higher above that environment, and then to take, because how we were talking about earlier, the light that is within you is in control of the matter that is outside of you. Remember, matter is powerless. It is nothing. It is animated by a force that is mind, a consciousness, an awareness, an individual ego, and the I am, the soul. To limit, okay, no, I was on this side. To live in the transcending atmosphere is to place the mind above the forces of environment, above the influence of the external world. The actions of mind will therefore not be determined by external circumstances, but by the superior aims of the inner mentality. And this is extremely important in the perpetuation of youth, because the mind that has resolved to stay young must not permit itself to be influenced by the appearance of age, but must cause all its actions to be governed by the power of its own determination to stay young. And the determination to stay young involves your mind, your thought, to think correctly. When the actions of the mind are being governed or modified by external circumstances, the states of the mind will be created, more or less, in the likeness of those circumstances. In consequence, the mind will not grow into the likeness of its own ideals. It will therefore fail to realize the objects in view, because it is being influenced by its environment. It is thinking equal with its environment, so therefore it will not grow into the likeness of its own ideals. To prevent the conditions of external circumstances from impressing themselves upon the mind must place itself in the closest touch possible with the ideal, the great, the worthy, and the beautiful. When the mental eye is singled upon the ideal, it will not be impressed by anything that is not in accordance with its ideal. The mind is impressed only by those things that may enter its atmosphere. Therefore, if the mind is to avoid completely those impressions that are not wanted, it must surround itself with an ideal atmosphere. And that's amazing how he just says that, because even in practical mental influence, William Walker Atkinson, because we have the ability to be influenced by other people, and other people are influencing us by their own thoughts and their feelings towards us. That's why we have to be able to be strong within our own mind, within our own thoughts and emotions, so we're not easily influenced by somebody else. We don't want somebody else to have that, ooh, you're doing what we tell you to do, or anything like that. No, it's not like that. There's a difference between being of service to people and loving your people, and then just being a straight servant, a slave to somebody else. And being a slave is not what we're here to do. We're not slaves. We're all masters. We're masters of our own life, of our own fate. And we need to learn how to do that, and that is exactly what we are here. The information has always been around since the ancients, and is passed along through books. And, people in the West don't really read much nowadays, which makes us have this amazing opportunity, because we have the insight to see such an opportunity, and we're going to be able to do something great. God is going to do something amazing with this story, with this process, with this. He's working on me. He's working with me to do those things which I know we will do to bring people closer to Him. In order to bring people closer to Him, we must first become closer to Him. And we do that by thinking correctly, by understanding, by knowing. Remember, wisdom. Wisdom is above all. Wisdom has been in existence before earth has been in existence. That is why wisdom is above earth. That is why wisdom is above the material. Wisdom exists in mind. It cannot exist apart from mind. And since the mind is the creative power of the universe, wisdom is that thing that is above any material, anything material, for it is spiritual power. A tendency that works ceaselessly for the enlargement. Okay, I'm going to read that from here again. Therefore, to promote the perpetuation of youth, the mind must live in a mental atmosphere that is animated with a strong growing tendency. A tendency that works ceaselessly for the enlargement, the development, the spiritualization of the entire being of man. When the mind lives constantly with the elements of greatness, everything in the being of man will awaken its own capacity to produce greatness. And if you surround your mind with greatness, it'll rub off on you. And books will do that for you. The faculties of the mind will expand and develop, and the cells of the body will be aroused from their semi-alive condition and be thoroughly charged with life and power. These cells will be transformed from their withered-up condition and will begin to give expression to the fullness of their own inherent capacity. In consequence, the entire personality will eliminate the conditions of old age, because such conditions can exist only in cells that are withered, dried up, ossified, or depressed. To place the mind in touch with the power of greatness is to awaken every atom in the human system to live new life and To place the mind in touch with the power of greatness is to awaken every atom in the human system to new life and new endeavor. Every part of the system will proceed to outdo itself, to transcend itself, and to outgrow completely its own limited conditions. The entire system will thereby pass through an absolute transformation. The old will pass away and all things will become new. When the entire system is constantly passing through such a process, every part of the system will constantly renew itself, and the entire system will constantly pass through such a process if the mind continues to live in perfect touch with the power of greatness. There can be no condition of age while the human system is constantly being renewed, expanded, and enlarged. Therefore, the man that is constantly growing in greatness will never grow old, because they are growing, they're moving forward. To enter the greater is to enter the new. To enter the new is to give expression to the new, and to continue to give expression to the new is to continue to stay young. To live in the world of the beautiful is to impress the mind more and more with the idea of the beautiful. This idea will awaken in the human system the power that can beautify the human system, because every idea that gains a foothold in the mind will tend to awaken those powers that are similar to itself. To awaken the beautifying power is to cause all the elements, qualities, and expressions of the human system to become more beautiful, and everything becomes younger, looks younger, and feels younger when it becomes more beautiful. To make the body look beautiful is to make the body look young, and the reason why is found in the fact that the chemical actions of the interior beautifying process tend to produce conditions of youth. The beautifying process, however, must proceed from the subconscious, and to cause this process to become established in the subconscious, the soul should live constantly in the highest realms of the world, beautiful. To think beautiful thoughts is to awaken the power within us that can develop the beautiful in our minds and bodies, providing these thoughts have soul, have feeling, have life, and have love. And the same power that develops the beautiful will also produce the conditions of youth. To place in action any beautifying process that comes from within is to perpetuate the youth of the personality, and that personality is ever becoming more beautiful in life, feeling, form, and expression will never grow old. But it is not sufficient to simply preserve that beauty that nature has originally given. To perpetuate the qualities of youth, the qualities of beauty must ever be made more and more beautiful, and this becomes possible when the soul ascends perpetually into higher and higher states of beautiful, in higher states of thought, thinking beautiful thoughts. When the soul grows in the consciousness of the beautiful, higher and higher degrees of the beautifying power of life will be placed in expression. And as the personality always grows into the likeness of these expressions from within, the personality will become more and more beautiful. In consequence, the qualities of youth will be retained. And why? Because we act out those habitual thoughts we think. When we create a mental home of beauty and peace and thoughts of courage and righteousness and just, then we will express that and act on that in our life. It is not possible, however, for the soul to grow in the consciousness of the beautiful unless the life of the individual is made beautiful, and every thought created in the likeness of that state of the beautiful that we think of as our highest ideal. Now that is the end of chapter 16, entitled The Ideal, the Beautiful, the Worthy, and the Great should be constant companions of the soul. Now another person I want to compare this to is Emerson, and how Emerson writes in his summary of the Oversoul towards the end, and Wallace D. Wattles also put this portion in The Science of Being Great at the end of the book. Wallace D. Wattles talks about Emerson a lot too, and the things that he philosophized with, and his ideas of the Oversoul. Because Emerson was the same way. He was the same as all of this. He was aware of thought. He was aware of this energy. He was aware of the universal mind and how this mind works. He was aware that this consciousness is also the very consciousness that has created us, is the very same consciousness that is inside this pine cone. He was aware of all of that, and Emerson talks about how the soul requires justice, but justice isn't it. It requires beneficence, but beneficence is not that. The soul, the consciousness of what we are, our mind, is something beyond anything within this world. It's nothing but intangible. It's not physical. And our thoughts, our thinking is a process of this force, this I am, this I think therefore I am, our awareness. It is a product of our very being. And we have to think upon those things that are just. We have to think upon those things that are right, because there is that moral scale. That the soul requires justice, but justice is not that. And when the soul goes for and starts thinking justly, he moves into a godlike morality. He becomes godly. He becomes a light in the world. But a soul that does not think upon just and does not think about those things that are worthy will invariably be attacked by the opposite. If you don't have your eyes towards the good, the only other thing there is going to be towards the bad. There's no median. There's no middle. Positive or negative. Positive or negative. Positive or negative. That is the reality of the world we live in. And don't want to scare anybody, but people who don't want to be positive or negative would be considered a nobody. They're considered somebody that isn't truly alive, because they haven't been born again of the Spirit yet. They're not aware of the energy of things. They're not aware. They're zombies, you can say. Zombie is a concept. There's no apocalypse like Left 4 Dead that's going to happen. That's not going to happen. That happens within the mind, within the thoughts, and what a person thinks. So with all that being said, that's the end of this chapter. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. Remember, we are the lights of the world, you and me, and together we can make a difference in this world. And it starts with you.